Hey guys, this is Thorn. Hadn't made a video in a while and thought I'd ramble at you about things that have been on my mind. I actually just wrote a blog for Pathos, which is available if you want to follow the links below. But I spent a few days at the beginning of the week out of town visiting with family. We had something come up and I needed to take a break and fly home. And I was just really it had been a while, so I was really struck by the kind of the dissonance between being home and being there's not really a good way to put this, but basically being one person when you're at home and being another person when you're with your family or whomever, and how, as pagans or witches or whatever, we take on magical names. A lot of us take on craft names of some sort, or else we construct identities in our pagan spaces, right? And maybe it's not fair to talk about constructing identities, although that's how I think of it. But I know for a lot of people, it's more like being true to your real identity or something like that. And but either way, we are different people when we're doing craft stuff versus when we're hanging out with our moms or hanging out with, our bosses or something. And that, I could see where that would create a lot of dissonance for some people. It doesn't so much do that for me. I actually find it kind of exciting, like having a secret or something. But it's a super weird experience because we talk about broom closets, right? And being in or out. And are you publicly a witch? Do people know you're a witch? Are you out to your parents or your husband or whatever? And it's never really a question of being totally in or totally out. Like, you can be, I think all of us have parts of ourselves that we reserve for some people and not others. So even if, like, I'm on YouTube, right, and I have a blog on Pathos, I'm pretty public as far as being a witch, but I don't go home and talk to my family about it. I don't like call my mom up and I'm like, hey, how about August Eve last night? My scythe is pretty big, right? Like that doesn't happen. And it's not because I have to keep things secret necessarily. It's more just about context, and some people just don't need to know. I know there are some groups out there and there are some people out there who advocate, this process of coming out as a pagan or a witch. And people talk about it as analogous to coming out with regard to sexuality. I'm not sure that that's a fair comparison, but I think there are a lot of people out there who feel stifled when they can't be open and honest, and it becomes kind of this ritualized, important social act to come out as a witch or as a pagan. And I've just never felt that. And I think a lot of it is because I've never had to be particularly discreet. Like, I've never been in any kind of situation where I've faced any kind of backlash for being Wiccan. My experience has been that, generally speaking, people don't care in my life. Worst case scenario, they've never heard of it and they're just sort of bored. And so I didn't have that sort of kind of like coming out experience. But nonetheless, there are people who I don't tell and people who I don't talk to about it. And it's just because sometimes it's not appropriate to do so. Like, I don't feel like there's any reason for your boss to know what your religious persuasion is unless it actually impacts what's going on at work, which, like, generally speaking, for most of us, I don't know. My religion has never impacted my work life in any kind of significant way. When I've needed to take off for some kind of coven thing or religious whatever, I put in for time the way I would if I just wanted to go on a vacation, or if I needed to go to a funeral or something like that. Like, the process is exactly the same. So I've never had the experience of needing to tell people in a workplace. So yeah. And I know it also strikes people, like, my coven mates now, I know we sort of joke about the don't ask, don't tell policy I have in place with my parents. You know, I live by myself. I live in a different state. I don't see my parents very frequently. And like Corvus, for example, same situation. When her parents are in town, she hides a lot of her witch shit because she just doesn't want to deal with her mom having a freak out because Corvus is up to something different religiously. I think her parents were uncomfortable enough with her just being a UU that being a witch on top of it, she feels like that would be a bad idea for them to know. Me, honestly, religion was never a focus growing up, so it's not that I think that my parents would be concerned about me being Wiccan necessarily. They'd be more concerned with me being odd and maybe socially unacceptable. Like, my parents would freak out if they thought I was doing anything that impacted my employment future. That would be the line. Right? If my mother thought it stood in the way of me someday, like, having babies, then there might be something worth fighting over. But as far as just being religious, I don't think they don't necessarily care about that by itself. But like, they come to visit and there's no hiding anything. Like there's just too much shit all over the house and there's nowhere to put it. So it's out and there's a bajillion books and, you know, there's no hiding any of it. So I have to just kind of roll with it. And my parents never say anything. And it's kind of this hilarious thing that happens where you walk into the house and you'd know exactly what you were looking at. My parents are savvy, educated people. They are not dumb. They know what they're looking at. It just doesn't come up in conversation. Usually because they're too busy being concerned about my work or schooling or something. It's not the priority. So am I out to my parents, right? Am I closeted? I don't know. Like, I don't know that either of those categories really applies to the relationship that I have with my parents. So anyway, the whole in the closet or out of the closet thing is just, I think it's an oversimplification. And I think we all have different relationships with different people. Sometimes, even realistically, if I'm out as a witch, that's still not me telling you exactly what I'm up to or what I believe. Like, I tell you that I'm Wiccan, and, you know, you might make certain guesses or assumptions about what I practice and what I believe based on what you know about Wicca, and that may or may not be accurate, right? I meet somebody at Pagan Pride Day, and they tell me that they're pagan. Like, what do I actually know about that person? Are they out to me religiously? Or, they're probably keeping secrets. I would assume so. So it's, I don't know. I just think it's interesting when you become aware of the complexity and you sort of, right, like, disabuse yourselves of the notion that it's actually this strict dichotomy, because it's not. So anyway, it's interesting. It was interesting being back amongst family again in a different state altogether, and having this life where, you know, relatives I haven't seen in years are like, "Oh, what are you up to?" And I say things about being in school and doing stuff in an education program and whatever, and I don't tell them, "Oh, and I have this blog and I'm going to this big pagan conference thingy in February, and oh man, witchcraft is so great, and right, and I read tarot cards professionally." Like, I don't have that conversation with them, because that's usually more information than they want anyway. What if I did, though? That'd be great. I have this fantasy about going, like, speed dating or something and just being brutally honest during all of those stupid questions. I don't even know if speed dating works that way. I just know what I see on TV. But yeah. So anyway, it was an interesting experience. Like, I've got a different identity online than I do when I'm with my parents, than I do when I'm with my larger family or my coven or whatever. And none of those identities is a lie. Like, all of them are me. They're just facets of me, and nobody gets the complete picture. And I imagine that's probably true of all of us. So anyway, just some musings. I hope you all have been doing well. I'm going to try to post a little bit more in the next couple of weeks because I'm getting out of summer classes. So I'll have a little bit more free time before I have to freak out for the fall and actually write the syllabus for the class that I'm supposed to be teaching in like 3 weeks. So Hope you all are well.
Meow. Ow.